Ready to unlock some serious business creativity.
Yeah.
We're ditching the motivational posters and buzzwords today.
Yeah, we're diving deep into how to actually make creativity work for you.
Love that. And to guide us, we've got excerpts from Creativity in Business, a fascinating conference book.
Packed with insights from leading minds. We're talking a buffet of perspectives, all prepped for you.
Now, something Reisman said really struck me. He compares creativity to, like, a mythical land.
Oh, I know what you mean. Everyone's heard of it, but nobody can find it on a map.
Exactly. Everyone agrees creativity is key to business success, but how many actually use it well?
It's true.
It's like this elusive unicorn. We think we've seen it, but describe it, let alone catch it.
And that's because we often misunderstand what creativity is. It's not just those eureka moments.
Right.
It's about the process, the steps to cultivate those moments more consistently.
So instead of chasing unicorns, we're learning to, breed them.
Precisely. And just like breeding anything, no instant results. It's nurturing growth over time. Stage actually takes us back to ancient history to illustrate this.
Ancient history? Okay, now I'm intrigued.
Yeah. He argues that even back then, major creative breakthroughs, they weren't just happy accidents. They were often driven by big shifts in perspective.
You're saying even back then, people weren't tripping over groundbreaking innovations. They were actively
Looking at things differently.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Inventing the wheel seems obvious now, right?
Mhm.
But it meant a huge shift in how people saw transportation. They had to abandon just dragging things and imagine this whole new possibility.
That's wild. It makes you realize those aha moments, the big leaps forward, they come from unexpected places.
Yeah.
And it starts with perspective. But how do we actually shift our perspective, break free from our usual thinking? How do we get those creative juices flowing?
That is the million-dollar question. And one method that caught my eye is Grossman's cruising to aha.
Cruising to aha. Okay, that sounds fun, like my kind of road trip.
Right, very fitting. And like a good road trip, maybe some unexpected detours. Grossman bases this method on Darwinian theory, actually.
Wait, Darwin. Survival of the fittest, Darwin. What's that got to do with brainstorming?
More than you'd think. Extinction, mutation, selection, that drives evolution, right? Nature's always adapting to survive. We can use these same principles for business creativity, believe it or not.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. Extinction, mutation, selection.
Oh.
These are driving focuses of evolution, and we can apply them to, like, brainstorming sessions. Tell me more.
That's right. Grossman breaks it down into 3 phases. Each one is key in getting us to those aha moments.
All right, so let's unpack this. First up, extinction. What does that even mean in business?
Oh.
Are we firing everyone who doesn't have a good idea?
Definitely not. Extinction here means confronting why past ideas failed, being brutally honest about their shortcomings. We need to know what didn't work and why.
So it's like learning from your mistakes, but deeper, more analytically, not just, ooh, that didn't work. You're dissecting the reasons for the failure.
Exactly. It's like a post-mortem for ideas. And this step's often overlooked because, honestly, it can be uncomfortable. Nobody enjoys dwelling on their failures, right? But it's essential for growth. It's clearing out the dead wood to make space for new ideas.
So we're weeding our mental gardens. Got to get rid of those pesky weeds to let the flowers bloom.
Perfect analogy. And this is where I think you, as our listener, can connect. Think about your own experiences, those times when a project flopped. What were the root causes? What lessons did you learn?
Okay, so we've faced those failures, weeded out our mental gardens. Now it's time for some radioactive goo and idea mutation.
Well, maybe not the radioactive goo part, but you're getting the idea. Grossman suggests 3 rounds of mutation, each pushing us further from those obvious logical solutions. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I am all ears. How do we mutate our ideas without resorting to, questionable science experiments?
Grossman has some seriously intriguing prompts. For example, in the 2nd round, he suggests asking, what would my child suggest? Imagine tapping into that uninhibited, wildly creative perspective kids have.
That's brilliant. It forces you to think beyond what's considered practical or realistic.
Exactly. And it's not about being silly. Kids often cut through complexity and get to the heart of the issue. Another prompt is to imagine you've got this superpower, right? You can change a fundamental law of nature. What happens? How does that impact your problem?
Whoa. Okay, talking about thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
These prompts are designed to shatter our assumptions.
Absolutely. By pushing past what we think is possible, even if it's just in our minds, we unlock whole new avenues for creativity. You might be surprised by the insights that come when you let go of logic for a bit and embrace the impossible.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to brainstorming. I usually try to jump into those practical, actionable ideas. But this method encourages you to explore the wild, the impractical, even the absurd first.
Because sometimes those wild ideas have a kernel of genius. Remember, the airplane was once considered impossible. It's about letting your mind explore without judgment, without limitation.
Okay, I'm starting to see the method to this madness. So we've gone through extinction, we've mutated our ideas into some fascinating hybrids. What's the final step? Selection. Do we just pick the best, most practical idea from the bunch?
Not quite. Selection here isn't about just choosing the most appealing idea or even the most feasible. It's about going deeper and finding the hidden utility in each one.
So even the seemingly crazy ideas might hold a valuable insight or spark a connection that leads to a breakthrough.
Precisely. Think of it like panning for gold. You might sift through lots of dirt and debris, but eventually you find those nuggets of pure creative gold. This step is about asking, what can we learn even from the wildest ideas? How can we take something useful and apply it to the real world?
That's a crucial distinction. It's not about picking a winner and tossing out the rest. It's about finding the value in every idea, even the impractical ones. Refinement and adaptation.
Yes, and this is key for you, our listener. Effective brainstorming isn't about making a big list of ideas and hoping for the best. It's about understanding the mechanisms behind those ideas. That's how you go from scattered brainstorming to a real process of innovation.
This has totally changed how I see creativity. It's not just about those eureka moments. It's about actively engaging in a process of exploration, experimentation, and refinement.
Exactly. And cruising to aha is just one approach. There are many others out there, each with its own strengths. The key is finding the ones that work for you, your team, and your challenges. It's about building your own toolkit for unlocking creativity.
I love that. Building a creativity toolkit. It's like we're becoming creative artisans, gathering the right tools for the job. But we don't just need the right tools, do we? We need the right environment for them to work their magic.
100%. The environment can either make or break creativity. And this is something Ambrose gets into when he talks about the four worldviews: mechanistic organicist, contextualist, and formist.
Four worldviews. Okay, I have to admit, that sounds a bit abstract. Can you break it down? Can you give some real-world examples of how these worldviews play out in a business setting?
Sure, think of the mechanistic worldview, like a well-oiled machine. Every part has a specific function. There's a clear hierarchy, and the focus is on efficiency predictability. In contrast, the organicist worldview is more like a jazz band, jamming together. It's fluid, adaptable, thriving on improvisation and spontaneity.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So a leader with a mechanistic worldview might prefer a very structured work environment with defined roles and processes, while a leader with an organicist approach might encourage more autonomy, experimentation, and collaboration.
Exactly. And neither worldview is inherently better. It's about understanding which one best suits your team, your culture, and your goals.
So self-awareness is key here. Leaders need to know their own tendencies and how those might impact their team's creativity.
Absolutely. And it's not just the leader. Team members need to be aware of their own preferred ways of working and how those fit with the team. Open communication and a willingness to adapt are essential.
And maybe recognizing that different projects might need different approaches. A highly structured mechanistic approach might be perfect for a project that demands precision and attention to detail. But if you're trying to come up with a groundbreaking new product or marketing campaign, a more organic, free-flowing approach might be better.
Exactly. It's about having the flexibility to adjust your sails based on the winds of creativity. Sometimes you need a steady hand on the rudder, and other times you need to let the wind carry you to new destinations.
I love that analogy. It speaks to the dynamic nature of creativity. Speaking of dynamics, is there ever a time when individual creativity might be more effective than group brainstorming? Or are we always better off pooling our ideas?
That's a great question, and it's something Walton explores in the book. He points out that there's a natural tension between individual and group creativity.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Sometimes we need solitude to tap into our creative depths, and other times we need the synergy of a group.
Exactly. And knowing when to embrace which approach is crucial. Some people thrive in environments where they can let their imaginations run wild without interruption. Others generate their best ideas through discussion and debate.
This makes me think about how different personalities and work styles can influence team dynamics. If you have a team of introverts, a forced brainstorming session might not work well.
You're absolutely right. It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to be creative. It's about understanding the strengths and preferences of each person and creating an environment where everyone can contribute their best work.
So flexibility and adaptability are key, both in the creative process and in how we structure our teams and work environments.
Precisely. And this actually connects to another crucial part of fostering creativity, especially in today's world, cultural considerations.
That's a great point. We can't talk about creativity without acknowledging that different cultures might have very different approaches to the creative process.
Exactly. What works for a team in one culture might not work for a team in another. Walton highlights how some cultures might emphasize individual expression and originality, while others prioritize collective effort and consensus building.
That makes sense. A brainstorming session in a culture that values individual expression might look very different from one in a culture that prioritizes group harmony and consensus.
Absolutely. And knowing these cultural nuances is crucial for anyone working in a global team or organization. It's about understanding that there are many paths to creative success, and what matters is finding the path that works for your team.
This is all so insightful. It's clear that fostering a truly creative environment requires understanding individual personalities, team dynamics, and cultural considerations. It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe to take risks, experiment, and share their ideas.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating that culture of psychological safety, where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities and diversity of thought is celebrated.
Speaking of celebrating diversity of thought, let's talk about some tools for jumpstarting creativity. Reisman has a whole section on this, outlining techniques like scamper force connections and many more. It's like a goldmine.
It is, and there are so many great techniques out there. It can feel overwhelming, like walking into a candy store and not knowing where to start.
Exactly. So where do we begin? Do we need to master every technique, or are there some that are more universal?
You don't need to be a master of everything, but having a few good tools in your kit is never bad. And if you're looking for a place to start, I'd recommend Scamper. It's super versatile and can be applied to lots of problems.
Scamper sounds interesting. Tell me more about how it works.
Scamper is an acronym. It stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse. It gives you a framework for generating new ideas by prompting you to ask specific questions about the problem.
Okay, that sounds pretty simple. So let's say I'm trying to come up with a new marketing campaign for a product launch. How could I use Scamper?
Great question. You could start by looking at each part of your current marketing and ask, what can I substitute? Could you try a different platform, a different message, a different audience? Then you move on to combine. Can you merge two existing campaigns into something new? Could you combine different media to make a bigger impact?
I see. So you're basically putting your current ideas through the Scamper filter, looking for chances to innovate at each step.
Exactly. And by the time you've gone through all 7 prompts, substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse, you'll probably have a ton of new ideas.
It's like a mental checklist for creative problem solving.
Eh.
I like how it's structured, but still open-ended. It gives you some guidance without limiting your creativity.
And you can use Scamper for almost anything. It's great for product development, process improvement, new business ideas, even just everyday life.
That's amazing. It's like a Swiss Army knife for creativity. But is there ever a risk of relying too much on these tools? Can they stifle our natural creativity?
That's a good question. It's true, there's always that danger of becoming too formulaic. These tools are meant to be helpers, not crutches. They're meant to inspire us, help us break free from our usual thinking, not to box us in.
So it's about finding that balance between structure and freedom, guidance, and intuition. We need to make sure the tools don't become the only thing driving our creativity.
Exactly. Think about learning an instrument. At first, you rely on scales and exercises to build technique, but as you get better, you start to improvise to let your own style come through.
That's a great analogy. It's about using the tools as a starting point for our own creative exploration, not as a rigid set of rules.
Exactly. The key is to stay curious, to be open to new possibilities, and to never be afraid to experiment.
I love that. So even when we're using these techniques, it's important to stay playful and be willing to think outside the box.
Absolutely. And that's where the magic happens, when we let go of expectations and embrace the joy of creative exploration.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation about creativity. We've gone way beyond the usual cliches and really dug into the processes, the environments, even the tools that can help us unlock our creative potential. It's been great.
It has. We've covered so much, from ancient history to Darwin to modern brainstorming, and it all points to one key takeaway.
What's that?
That creativity isn't some mystical gift. It's a skill, a process, a muscle that we can all develop. It's about having the right mindset, building the right environment, and embracing the journey.
That's such an important message. We hope you, our listener, are leaving today feeling inspired and ready to unleash your own creative potential.
Remember, there's no one right way to be creative. Experiment, explore, and most importantly, have fun.
Because when we approach challenges with curiosity and playfulness, that's when the truly innovative solutions come out. And who knows, you might just surprise yourself with what you can create.
And don't forget, sometimes the most groundbreaking ideas come when we dare to build a whole new box.
Yeah, taking a moment to let it all sink in. That's so key. It's easy to get caught up in those new ideas.
Yeah.
But I feel like when we give ourselves space to reflect, that's when the real magic happens.
It really is. It's like we're planting seeds, right?
Mm.
We've prepped the soil, we've sown these seeds of possibility. Now we need to let them germinate.
I love that analogy. Speaking of germination, I'm remembering something we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
that idea that constraints can actually boost creativity.
Yeah.
Seems counterintuitive, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense.
It's interesting, isn't it? We think of constraints as these obstacles, these things that limit our creativity. What if we flipped that, started seeing them as opportunities to innovate?
So instead of how do I get around this, it's how can I use this to my advantage, right? How
Yeah.
can this push me to think differently, to find a solution I wouldn't have otherwise?
Exactly. Think about some of the most iconic art music literature. It was all born from constraints. Take the sonnet, 14 lines, rhyme scheme, strict meter. Talk about limitations.
Right.
And yet look at the incredible work created within those boundaries.
Such a good point.
Mm.
It reminds us that limitations, if we approach them right, can really spark amazing creativity.
You can. It all comes back to perspective.
Mm.
If we can see those limits not as roadblocks, but as challenges to overcome, as puzzles to solve, then bam, we unlock a whole new level of creativity.
It's like those life hacks you see. People using everyday stuff in totally unexpected ways to solve problems.
Exactly. A binder clip to organize your cords. A muffin tin for serving condiments. Proof that limitations can breed creativity.
It really is amazing what we can come up with when we're challenged. So next time you hit a roadblock in your business, don't panic. Don't let it kill your creative spark. Instead, think of it as a chance, an opportunity. Get curious, get inventive, see what you come up with.
I love that. Embrace the constraints. Use them as fuel and watch your creativity take off.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. We've explored so much, the process of creativity, the power of perspective collaboration, and even how those limitations can be a good thing. It's incredible how much ground we covered.
It really has. We've gone from ancient history to Darwin to modern brainstorming techniques, and it all comes back to that core idea that creativity is within everyone's reach.
It really is. And as we wrap up today, we want to leave you, our listener, with this reason. Creativity isn't some mystical talent. It's a skill. It's a process. And just like any skill, you can develop it.
Yeah.
You can hone it with practice. It's about building the right environment, finding the right tools. And remember, have fun along the way.
Yes, exactly. Don't be afraid to play experiment, try new things. And who knows, you might just stumble onto the next big idea.
That's what it's all about. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into creativity in business. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration as much as we have. And until next time, remember to stay curious, keep those creative sparks flying, and always be on the lookout for those unexpected opportunities.
Because they're all around us.